Welcome back, guys. I wanted to bring up another question that comes up quite frequently, and that's why would they need to go through Williams Group? What can we offer them that they can't do on their own? Because private equities are out approaching doctors all the time, and so they're not understanding, is there a benefit to getting somebody to help represent them?
Yes, good, very good question, Dr. Carmen. We get it all the time. You and I were on the phone with a colleague out in the Southeast a few weeks ago, and he was just direct in his question, which was fine. He just said, why do I need you guys? And to do this, my attorney says I don't need anybody. I could do it myself. And both of our answers to him was, you're right, you could. You can do it by yourself. If you feel capable of kind of going to battle with the likes of Goldman Sachs, and you understand the intricacies of EBITDA and trailing 12-month P&Ls and 83B elections. If you choose to do rollover equity, there are so many things that it is a very tedious process. And so let's start with maybe the most important thing. It's not unlike selling your personal home. Every real estate agent will always tell you that one of the most difficult appointments they have is that initial listing appointment, when they have to kind of bring Mr. and Mrs. homeowner back down to earth about what the real value of their home, because it's my home, right? Perhaps I had a family and I raised my children there. It was our first house, or it was our dream house, or whatever the circumstances may be. And as much as I liked the purple walls and the white carpeting, the real estate agent is the one that has to say, you know what, the purple walls and the white carpeting are probably not going to be a big benefit to a lot of people. And so a lot of real estate agent friends of mine have said it's very difficult to tell someone that even though you love your home and it's where you raised your family and all those things, its value is really determined by the marketplace. And so we in a peer-to-peer transaction, and we still do a tremendous amount of work in that arena, in the peer-to-peer. Whenever a doctor has, in my opinion or our opinion, a unrealistic value of what their practice is worth, I always tell them, doctor, we can price your practice at whatever you want. It's fine. But all it means when you overprice your business is how long you're willing to wait to get what you were going to get anyway. That's what it means. Because at the end of the day, it's the market that will determine the price. And so one of the big components of representation is that I had a transaction a couple years ago in which I thought the seller was being unrealistic. And he had attempted the transaction on his own. And private equity just, they just got up one day and said, look, this is not going to work. I don't think you're in a place right now to sell your practice. No problem. We'll part as friends. We'll shake hands. And they basically took their initial offer off the table. And so a year and a half or so later, he called and said, hey, maybe I need representation. And so we engaged and represented him. And we were able to mitigate for him some of the trap doors that he was constantly falling into about the intrinsic value of the business, about his employment contract, because that's one thing about private equity, besides just negotiating, we think a higher purchase price for you in terms of representation. We're very familiar with the kind of things that can be negotiated and the things that can't be negotiated, and how to negotiate and get you the best employment opportunity. Because as we've talked in several of these webinars, private equity is not a good option or model for a doctor who says, hey, I was working with a colleague the other day on the West Coast who said, hey, I'm not interested in private equity because I want to be done by June 30th. I have no intention of working 3 to 5 years longer than I'm working now. I understand that. So he said, and I know I'll probably leave some money on the table, but I just want out. And so if you're a doctor who really is pretty well at the end of your optometric career, and you're saying, hey, probably in the next 6 months, 8 months, I'd like to be out, private equity is not a particularly good model. But if you do go down the private equity road, you probably will be engaged in a working clinical relationship with a private equity firm for the next 3 to 5 years. So one of the big parts of representation is for us to try to get you the best, employment situation, employment agreement that you can. And to be frank, I don't think this is an unfair or a statement that's just not true in reality. It's a tedious process. A lot of the information that is asked and requested, there many times a client just simply doesn't know what it is, what private equity is asking them for, or where do they get that information. We obviously work a lot with your accountants to get a lot of the payroll, tax information. What's called now everything is based on what's called a TTM, a trailing 12-month profit and loss statement. Many doctors have never heard that term. So representation, we are basically your eyes and ears. We're that other set of hands from the time we first engage with private equity until the transaction closes. And generally a transaction will close 90 to 120 days. I'm finding probably a little closer to 120 days than 90, but somewhere in that 3 to 4 month range from the time you get an LOI signed till you probably close the transaction and be paid. And we stand shoulder to shoulder with you for that entire process. And so, and most clients realize that at the end, that we probably get their fee and then some back in what we negotiate for them. So they still plus out even after they pay our fee.
Well, and I would just throw in a little plug here. The reason that I think Williams is so good is because you've got the relationships with multiple private equities.
Yes.
Where if you try to do it on your own, you may not be able to know who the best player is out there for your practice.
Right.
Where
yes, sorry.
Bill he's worked with all of the large players, and so he has those relationships. So if one doesn't work, that may not be the end of your pursuit of finding a private equity. There are multiples out there that we can help you find the buyer for your practice.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And because I think we have a really good, honest relationship. We deal with integrity and with all of our clients and with private equity. We get a lot of calls from private equity saying, hey, we want to expand into this geographic area. We've never been in there before. Let us know if you have any practices coming up. We'd like to work with you. You guys tend to have good practices that you represent. And like any buyer of anything, right? Private equity, they want as much as they can, they'd like to have their portfolio full of clients, their platform full of clients that are, really good, solid clinicians, good, solid people, because this is a working relationship over a fairly long period of time. So they want really good, solid people as well as good, solid practices. And they know that we tend to represent those folks. And so, yeah, you're right. We can sometimes, we know all the big players, we know some of the regional and smaller players. So we might be able to find a transaction that you might not be able to do on your own.
Excellent. Well, and that's going to bring us up to our next segment. So we'll say goodbye to this one,